Okay. Thank you very much and welcome to today's program. And today we're talking about artificial intelligence and future technologies. We have two amazing guests, Roselyne Wanjiru from Kenya and Christian Bush from New York City. So that's in the US. And we're looking forward to a great conversation. Before we actually start, I would just like you to kindly introduce yourselves as more guests join.
All right, so I'm Roselyne Wanjiru by name, and I'm currently an economist, and I serve or work as the Director of Growth and User Acquisitions at Pesabase. And Pesabase, in a nutshell, is a financial services company, but the special thing about us is that we're leveraging blockchain technology to connect Africa financially. So why is that so important? I mean, you just need to step into the neighboring country to find out that it's going to take you a while to set up your payment account and your calling account so that you can get your business done. And we'd love to make that easier for millions of people across the continent, and not just for Africa, but for people around the world. And we're starting at home. Why? Because it's right where we are. So I'm excited to have this conversation today because the future of tech is here for us to brainstorm upon, collaborate in, and innovate as we build solutions that matter to us and to our communities. Thank you.
Exactly. Exactly. I think that's really good. Christian.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining. It's wonderful to be here. I'm running the Global Economy program at New York University, the Center for Global Affairs. Before that, I've been running the Innovation Center at the London School of Economics, and I founded a couple of businesses in social entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship. And what I found fascinating is the question of how do we essentially, in whatever situation we're in, how do we set ourselves up for the unexpected? In a fast-changing world where we can't really predict what will happen next, how do we prime ourselves to build this muscle for the unexpected? And so that book that we'll talk about later, I think also, Calvin, is around that serendipity mindset. So how do we essentially find meaning in every situation and make the best out of what is at hand? And so that's a lot of our work that we've been doing in Sub-Saharan Africa on the continent, is really to say, how do we essentially scale social and financial impact by building that kind of muscle?
Okay. Yeah, I think that's really good. Thank you very much, Roselyne, and also Christian as well. I mean, today's topic is quite a very important topic to the current world. We've seen how many countries are actually trying to innovate, and many countries actually are going through, trying to transform their different sectors through innovation and all that. Roselyne, what do you understand by artificial intelligence? And when people talk about future technologies, which I know it's more of like the Internet of Things, what do you think about that? What's your take on artificial intelligence?
All right. We can look at quite a number of definitions, but I'd like to actually dwell on the application. And by that, I would like to just place, a simple idea out there. When you think about AI, artificial intelligence, wondering where to start, just think about your life becoming simpler through technology. And why is that? Different machines, different devices being, first of all, enabled or integrated with a lot of data and information. And what's this information being used to do? It's being used to make decisions quicker, more efficient, highly more informed. And whether we want to look at, for instance, the smart home or precision medicine, precision agriculture, different applications in the military, it's that you have a pool of data to harness. And once you harness this data, you're able to make your systems are a lot more efficient than they are. And with this efficiency, then you can work better as a person. So in that, I just, kind of share my thoughts around how to appreciate artificial intelligence as a technology that's to make our lives easier and more efficient.
Wow. Oh, fantastic. I mean, Christian, I know you work with a few innovation and all that. I mean, and just what's your general take on artificial intelligence?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, as Roselyne said, there's this amazing potential for us to, have an easier life because of it and complement a lot of the things we're doing. It might also, of course, help substitute or kind of do a couple of things that humans would have done. And so to me, the big question is, what is it in a way that makes us then human and that kind of differentiate us still from machines, right? When you have everything else happening in robots and machines and everything else. And that's why I'm so fascinated by this idea of, if you think about what sets humans apart, it's things like empathy, it's things like being able to feel the other person, develop something, being that products or something else that really resonates with someone on something else. And so I think that's where it gets really interesting to really think through, who am I as a human, and what is my kind of core capabilities and everything else, and how can artificial intelligence help me be even better at that, rather than, okay, hey, this is something that just substitutes me and puts me out of business. And I think I've always enjoyed what Jack Ma, this whole idea that in a way, with Alibaba and all these companies coming in, right? They have a lot of ideas of what they can do with artificial intelligence. But at the end of the day, this humanness of human connection, the question of how we build meaningful relationships and so on, I think that is uniquely human, at least for now. Give it a few years maybe. And you already have probably intelligent nurses, robot nurses and everything else. But I think for now, the interesting thing also for each of us is to think about, what is it that we really, in our kind of inner core, philosophically speaking, who is it, who we are, and how can artificial intelligence help us to, with learning and everything else. And that we'll talk probably later about this, but this idea of how do we develop our own North Star, and that idea of who we are, which then helps us to also understand better how artificial intelligence can help us reach that.
Yeah, exactly. I think right now the future is more focused on how can we better our life in different things and all that. And I think before we dig deep into artificial intelligence, Christian, just talk to us a little bit about your book, which I know it's something that we're actually going to dwell on. You just released a book that is quite, you put a lot of effort in terms of research for a lot of years, also traveling to different countries, working with different people. Could you kindly just give us a synopsis about your book and how the world is looking at and what should the book brings out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the book is really about this question of what I've seen in my last decade of work. I've been working a lot with very senior leaders in my research, in my work, and also with social entrepreneurs, innovators across the world, right? So that's in Sub-Saharan Africa, in India, in Mexico City, in New York, in London, and so on. And one of the things that I found fascinating is that the most purpose-driven, successful people, they had something in common. They all somehow intuitively cultivated serendipity. They were able to see something in the unexpected and turn it into positive outcomes. And so to me, the question became, what is the science-based framework for turning the unexpected into opportunity? And so that's obviously something that's at the core of entrepreneurship, that's at the core of innovation. Up to 15% of innovations essentially come from these kind of unexpected moments. Something spills and then you make something out of it. Think about things like Viagra or penicillin, or how your business came together, how you met your co-founder, how you met your wife. All these things in life, they come unexpected, right? We have this big plan and we think we can plan everything, and then the unexpected happens. And so my key question in this book is, how do we create this smart luck? So it's not like this blind luck that's about something happening to us, like inheriting something or being born into a good family. But it's the smart luck of seeing something and then connecting the dots and doing something with it. And so it's something we can train, we can put ourselves into it, and in a way we can get really good at it and create that smart luck in our lives.
Yeah, and that brings us to question of technology. I mean, which I think I'm gonna throw it to Roselyne. I mean, looking at how time has evolved, you love technology. You've seen how technology has been able to evolve, and right now we're talking about blockchain technology, which you're also very passionate about. Could you kindly probably maybe take us through what are some of the changes that you've seen over the years in terms of technology?
Sorry, just come again on the last phrase.
What are some of the involvement, something that you've seen over the time in terms of technology? Yeah.
All right, so I'll go back in time right to when maybe you sent your first email, and for a lot of people that felt weird and odd. And if you asked anybody, if they would stop using their mail and start using email completely, then they'd have looked at you like, no, not likely. We were comfortable with something, although it took long. We had a bit of a switch over getting into email, and I know a lot of people did forget their first email addresses, and getting the second one and third one, it just felt really, really weird. But
Yeah.
we've come such a long way from the first email to your first social media app, your first work app, and your first probably community app. Setting up your business online, and today it's such an unthinkable thing for you to imagine a world without your phone, your online, your online
Yeah.
world, and you being online to begin with. We hear all these debates about 5G, 4G, what's going to be good for us, what's not good for us. But really, we can't. It's hard for us to imagine a world that's offline. So, right from the first, documents and files that were shared on this magical thing called internet, because I say magical in a way because when you think about just the simplicity and yet the profundity that's connected to the online world, it's really amazing how long we've come. Just whether you want to talk about young people, old people, um, US, Africa, whether you want to talk about Europe, Asia, Australia, all around the world, there's a different story as to how this simple invention or this amazing invention called internet has changed so many lives. Because you imagine 10 years ago, if your child or a young person that you knew said that they wanted to be an online entrepreneur, they looked like they were out of their mind. But right now, if you're not thinking about any business to do with online means or platforms, then maybe you're out of your mind. But not to say that that's the
Exactly.
case. But the thing is that this is so much a part of our lives that it's affected us in both positive and negative ways. But we can always, being able to associate or assess the pros and the cons, be able to pick out the things that will be meaningful to us and the things that we can definitely place boundaries to, guard, protect, and the things that we need to be able to push to the next generation. Because as amazing as the internet is, as amazing as online platforms are, they are not the be all or end all. They're not like absolutely perfect. So there's still a lot of room for innovation in my view, and there's still also a lot of room for collaboration to create better platforms for us as communities and as businesses.
Yeah, yeah, Christian, in your book, which is called Serendipity, which is a very is a very good book. That, I mean, it's more like talking about the future and all that, and looking at technology at large. Are you worried about the future? Is it something that you feel like either things are going very fast, or do you think do you see back and just say, okay, so how is it going to be in the next 5 years? How is it going to be in the next 10 years? Now that we have 5G, now that we have internet everywhere, and you've been seeing, I don't know if you follow, like, what Elon Musk has been doing for the last, I think, few months, where he's launching a lot of satellites in the space, and most of this actually are going to be internet satellites. Are you worried about the future? Just unmute yourself.
Oh, yes, perfect. A colleague of mine did that recently. He was speaking for 30 seconds and only then someone told him. So thank you for telling me early on that I actually was muted. So actually I'm following the Viktor Frankl idea, this wonderful psychotherapist who wrote this Man's Search for Meaning book, which is highly recommended. And he had this beautiful idea of rational optimism, right? That in a way, we have to start as optimists to then end up as realists, because if we start as realists, we end up as a depressionist, right? And so, in a way, I'm this kind of optimistic rationalist, where I think, there's dangers with every technology, right? And especially at the moment where we don't have like proper regulation globally for these kind of questions, where essentially the new lawmakers are some kind of coders somewhere in Silicon Valley who are writing an algorithm which embeds societal inequality in their algorithm, which, when I Google my friend Muhammad, it always goes back to like Marcus, right? So it's kind of these different kind of things that are embedded in algorithms that are like essentially based on the biases of a young 20-year-old white kid in Silicon Valley. And I think that we have to change that. Like a lot of people who are extremely well trained technologically, they are not trained in terms of how to think about the societal implications. And so I think there's a lot of space and scope that we can think about what are the societal not only regulations but mechanisms we need to regulate that. But more importantly, I think there's this amazing opportunity, I think, to, if you think about how long people were held down by not having access to the internet, and how much the internet obviously can open up democratization to education and everything else. And so I'm actually very optimistic in that regard, both because of the technology that we have now to accelerate learning and everything else, but also, and I think what's even more important, a lot of our work in low income contexts. So, for example, in Bridgetown and in the Cape Flats in Cape Town, like, it's not necessarily high tech. That's very low tech, actually, what's been used and what's actually really effective, right? Like, there's this amazing organization, Reconstructed Living Labs, and it's a super simple education methodology where it's like, hey, here are 5 steps of how to use social media to sell your product, or this is 10 steps how to build a business. And they go into local communities and they find people locally who can teach this. And that in a way scales it up, the idea of how you can learn. And so I think, like, we have to always think about, yes, great, there's the technology, but what are simple ways of how we can pick people up bottom up rather than just kind of pushing technology on them? And so I'm a big fan of, like, these community-based models that actually integrate technology from day one in a very simple, low-cost way, rather than thinking too much about high tech and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, Roselyne, before we get into more details, more conversation on artificial intelligence, are you also worried about the future? Because I know you see a lot of technology, merging up and all this, and we're going to talk about a few of them. But are you also worried about how the future is going to be? And also looking at, sorry, I think we lost her. I think we lost her, but I think we lost her. But I think she'll still join us in a bit. I think she just maybe her internet or something like that. But anyway, Christian, let's just give us a little bit more about your book in terms of looking at future technologies and looking at how we're looking at things in terms of things are evolving every day and night. So how are we going to manage things like stress? How are we going to manage things like a lot of loneliness? Because you find that nowadays people are more connected to their gadgets than connected to the real people. How do we actually break that cycle?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think, and I feel the first wave of technology has been a lot about how do we as individuals use social media and everything else to build our personal brand and to put ourselves out there and to disseminate stuff. Yeah. And I think now what a lot of companies I work with are working with is to say, how do we really leverage the technology to get better at replicating offline communities in a way that is really about belonging, that is really about bringing people into the fold of community. And so I think, there's wonderful things. I've been working quite a bit with Uzoma Dozie, for example, who was running the Diamond Bank in Nigeria. And, one of the big conversations we've always had is, how do you essentially use platforms, simple platforms like Yammer, for example, or other things that we anyways use, to then accelerate the bonding between people by saying, great, like, if we create a culture where people can share openly about the things they're passionate about, then they can connect differently via these channels as well. And I don't think that's a technology question. I think that's a culture question for a company, right? That's like how we, for example, use meetings. When I look at the corporate culture of, like, healthy companies versus not so healthy companies, in unhealthy companies that use technology the wrong way, a lot of times people are afraid of speaking up. They are afraid of making mistakes. They're afraid of essentially just being, right, because they will get shut down. Versus in positive corporate cultures, like, a lot of times it's about, hey, like, tell me about something that didn't work. Let's see that as experimentation, and then let's celebrate the learning from that didn't work. And I think there's a lot of practices that we can use, and we can talk more later about, like, things like project funerals, for example, right, where when a project doesn't work out, how can we talk about it in a way that we can really learn from each other about the things that don't work? And I think when we have these kind of cultures, we feel much more connected with people, even if we're just virtual. And, we've been self-isolating here in New York for a while. I'm sure it's the same in other countries. And, like, this sense of belonging mostly comes from being open to be a little bit more vulnerable, rather than just kind of pretending that we all have everything figured out. And I think, that's one of the key premises also in the book, to say, look, at the end of the day, everyone's just winging it. Nobody has figured it all out. Like, seriously, I've worked with the most senior people you can imagine in the world, and I can tell you, no one has figured it all out. And after the third glass of red wine, everyone's like, oh, finally, I can tell you, I haven't it all figured out. And, it's hard for people to admit, right? Because we all need this illusion of control. But at the end of the day, we haven't figured it all out. And I think, again, if we can be all more honest about this, if we can all say, we're in this together, we're all going through transitions, we all have questions of identity and everything else at some point, like if we can be honest about this, then we can leverage technology to bring people closer together.
Yeah, exactly. Roselyne, could you kindly add something?
Sorry, this reconnecting with the question. I had my internet disrupted a bit.
Yeah, so just talking about, before we dwell into, are you worried about, a lot of things changing in terms of technology? And we were just talking about, right now you find that, most people actually spend most of their time online than they interact with with the real people. Do you feel that that's actually has future impact to humanity? I mean, the technology is good, yes, but what are some of the impact that it has, like the negative impacts?
Definitely negative impact. I mean, it's no secret that, especially among young people, but definitely not limited to young people, there's depression, mental health concerns that are associated with, excessive use of social media. Because if you want to consider it as an addiction, then yes, it can be an addiction for someone who can't function without going online as the first thing in the morning before they take breakfast, before they shower, before they start their routine. So it's definitely a negative, connotation, in the sense that if for someone who is not able to even differentiate the importance of their relationships online and offline, then we are left to actually ask ourselves as a society, then how do we create a space for healthy relationships? How do we create healthy workspaces? How do we make it deliberate and encourage people to just detoxify, create boundaries, have spaces whereby you're completely offline, just to have the room to think, have the room to spend time with yourself, and where you're not connected to your music, not connected to series and watching movies and stuff like that, but you just actually have a conversation with your family, your friends, and being in a social space, really just not doing anything that will involve being online. So the first
Yeah.
place in or step in this is that we actually have to acknowledge the impact of the use on social media, and not just really social media, but really the world and host of online apps, because social media ones tend to get the bad rep for the majority. But the fact is that we need to be able to create a safe space for these conversations to be had in a way that doesn't tear away at those who are affected. And you realize that if you shame someone, let's say, for being on Facebook all the time, then and you don't ask what they're doing there, the question is, you need to be able to reach out and determine what need are they seeking to be met. If they're looking for connection, then can they have or find or be directed to a space where they can actually connect with their peers, share their ideas, and get mentorship? Because if they need mentorship, then you are able to identify. If they can't get it offline, then maybe they need to just find the right channels online, right? And we need to be able to create, aside from that, then safer alternatives, really, because at the end of the day, our needs as human beings don't really go away. They may take a different shape in how they are met, but they do not go away. That's one thing we have to acknowledge. So it's that we need to be able to create a bit of a blend between online means and offline platforms, so that even the post pandemic period, where we are back to social events and life and events as we knew them before, it's
Yeah.
that we're not too disconnected on a social level to find meaningful relationships. Because once we're able to acknowledge, and once we're able to ask ourselves, okay, what are our needs, what do relationships mean to us, what are we seeking to achieve in the long term, in the view of our identity, our purpose, our goals, and meaningful relationships, then in answering and being really able to ask and answer these questions, then we'll be able to create that healthy and safe space. But we have to be able to acknowledge that yes, there are problems and there are solutions to these problems, but in approaching these solutions and addressing the problems, we need to be very gracious with each other, because shaming people out of it just won't work.
Yeah.
Whether it's in a professional context or a personal context, shaming people won't work. And it's that we need to be able to work together to create those healthy spaces for ourselves, because we all need them.
Yeah.
So I'm not,
Um,
I wouldn't say I'm scared. I'd rather be an ambassador of hope than of doom.
yeah, I mean, Rosalind, let's just go to back to you again. I mean,
Yeah.
dwelling on artificial intelligence.
Mhm.
How do you think artificial intelligence has really impacted, the fields like agriculture, medical field, manufacturing, and how do we look at it in terms of the future? Are we going to get more of such kind of impact? How has it actually impacted those different fields?
All right. As at now, I would say there's a huge impact in terms of especially being able to access more efficient data and predictive analytics. And those two for me are the most exciting applications because if I can know as a farmer when to plant, what to plant, what conditions to use, what input to have, then quality beats quantity, no doubt. And for the first time in history, I don't have to have a limited reach or experience, because just by again tapping online or being able to access the right platforms, then I can definitely do better. And that's a huge win for everybody. But the one of the challenges is that internet connectivity is not as great and as widespread as we'd want it to be for AI to reach the masses, because one use case or one statistic I like to highlight is that for Africa we haven't hit or gone beyond like 30% internet connectivity. So that means that for hundreds of millions of people, they are not able to access these benefits of quick access to just data, AI, and all that. So, because I mean, a lot of applications based on AI right now are heavily favored or optimized for, let's say, PC, smartphone devices, and just devices that can easily go online. But for hundreds of millions of people, is that they do have the basic feature phones. But of course, we're seeing more applications that bridge toward just SMS functionality, USSD, so that just with a simple code. Someone is able to access updates on what to do, when to do it, how soon, just really augmented and just information that really makes the work easy on the go. So we do have a long way to go in terms of especially user experience being optimized and made easier. But my prediction, my thought is that this especially in agriculture, I believe that for millions of farmers in Africa, it's that they need to be able to be connected to this world of data so that their farming can be a lot more productive and profitable than it has been before. Because for the first time in history, the means to actually do that are at hand. And at hand, I mean mobile devices. Really, it's going to be a lot more easier than it's been before.
Yeah. Uh, Christian, just unmute yourself. What do you think about how do you balance, how do you balance culture? How do you actually balance culture and artificial intelligence and future technology? Because looking at and I think that's something we're going to talk probably contribute next. Looking at things like looking at the application of artificial intelligence almost everywhere. Like you see the hotels, the future hotels won't even have somebody serving. How do we balance culture and technology? Because I think as time goes by, you find that we actually move away from our culture, African culture, or maybe Europe culture, different cultures, because of the so-called technology. How do we balance that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, both in terms of national culture and or kind of cultural settings itself, and then corporate culture, right? And how do we as organizations create our own kind of ecosystems of that? And I've been working a lot with a company in China, Haier. So they are the biggest company in the world that produce refrigerators, washing machines, and everything else. And one of the things they've been really good at is to say, we will use artificial intelligence for everything that is data related, right? So we know when someone opens the refrigerator, we know what they eat, we know, like, we build directly into the refrigerator what they can order directly from the farm, all this kind of stuff, right? There's a lot of stuff that gives them a lot of information, and then it goes directly to a kind of automatically sensor factory where it can automatically on-demand customize stuff. Like, it's amazing what they can do in terms of the future of automatizing most of the things that usually traditionally have like needed a whole step-by-step kind of like with a lot of people and stuff like that. So that's interesting on the data side, but I think what's important then is the question of what is it really where the magic happens, right? And I think the magic really happens for these kind of companies when they realize what is coming next, because the algorithms help them to identify how do we do better, how do we produce more, and so on, so on, so on. So, but like the interesting stuff, like for example, to give you an example, there was this, they got calls from farmers that asked them, that told them, hey, look, we have a problem with your washing machine is always breaking down. And so they asked, what is happening with your washing machine? And they were like, well, we're trying to washing our potatoes in this. And so they were like, well, this is unexpected, but you know what? There's a lot of farmers probably in China who also need to wash their potatoes. So why don't we build in a dirt filter and make it a potato washing machine? And so the point here is that an algorithm wouldn't have detected that necessarily as something that would be important to be detected, but that kind of like human element in the process was able to have a step change to this kind of new product or service. And so because they incentivize the culture to look out for the unexpected. And so I think that's also something where, again, serendipity comes in, that a lot of times algorithms are good for routine things, but then the real interesting kind of relating to the customer differently comes from this. Calvin, I think, or probably Roselyne, we probably have to wing this now. I'll ask you a couple of questions then. We'll figure something out. Yeah. But that sounds good. Do you feel you have a lot of serendipity in your life, or what is how do you in your life operate? Like, what has had the biggest impacts on your life? Like, what kind of mindset or what kind of approach?
Oh wow, that question is as broad for me as it's exciting. But I'd share like one dream that I've had from growing up. Really, I used to hear about children being harmed or hurt because they were online or they were lured, or things like that. And I would really get scared and wonder, would I be next? And I would feel like, oh my goodness, what can be done about that? But I can't say that I had too many role models or just platforms to be able to grow with that. But call it a seed that kind of had to just grow in my heart over time. So going through school, studying at work and all that, and I got to learn about the blockchain revolution, and I wondered, okay, what's the blockchain revolution? Then the fourth industrial revolution, that is now tech becoming increasingly integrated in our lives, and this incredible future literally just waiting to be written. And I felt, okay, now I have the means and I have the strength of thought, the depth of thought to actually appreciate what the online world is in terms of opportunity and not just risk. So being able to connect with different people in both internet/blockchain communities actually just struck a deep desire in me to, first of all, gain the skills and develop the kind of relationships that would enable me to become an enabler for others at first, and a voice of reason and a beacon of hope at the same time, to show that first there are opportunities in the digital world in terms of work, connection, creating communities, building influence and things like that, and a means actually for the first time to cross borders, to remove the limits that would have ordinarily just kind of limited so many people from, first of all, gaining information, then connecting, and then after connecting, then building like ideas and businesses plus different applications in different regards. So for me, I would say that becoming an online an online native and a global citizen in that right those are some of the thoughts that are really key for me. And part of the reason why I'm sure Calvin would be curious to know that I'm passionate about blockchain is that as a tech, fundamentally, it's that you're talking about a list, a distributed ledger. Really, with tech, it's that there's an idea behind the particular tool. So whether we want to look at IoT, AI, blockchain, each one of these are tools, but there are very amazing ideas behind these technologies. So in and of themselves, they're not perfect, but as people, we have the unique ability to determine our needs, to reach out, to connect, and to actually use these tools to make our lives better. So for me, it's that I am passionate about the potential of these technologies to make our lives way better than they had been before, because we actually have the means for the first time in history to do things that other people may have desired to, but did not have the means to do them. So that's why for me, I'm really passionate about this online world. And in a nutshell, I'm sure we can get into other ideas, but just breaking them down in different contexts.
Yeah, so sorry guys for technological itch. That those some of the negative impact of technology. Yeah, but yeah, let's go. I mean, one of the topics that actually interests me a lot is how the future looks like when it comes to autonomous, autonomous mobility, which is actually key. We're looking at probably in the next 10 years or 20 years, we'll actually have self-driven cars, we'll have self-driven planes, all that. And if you follow if you follow a little bit about recently, Elon Musk just launched the spaceship to this space station, and it was almost everything was actually being controlled. So what's your take? What's your take on that, Rosalind, when it comes to autonomous mobility, and what's some of the impact? And I think also Christian can be able to touch on some of the probably some of the unpredicted happenings. And I think we saw a few years ago when Elon Musk was trying. I think they were doing testing for their first self-driven car, and I think it hit someone or something. So how do you work in future with this, and still make sure that human beings are safe? Because you don't want to you don't want to have a self-driven car that will knock people down.
All right. So I think for me, one of the first and most important things is safety. Safety, safety,
Yeah.
safety. Why?
Hmm.
Because if all the concerns around tech becoming, or especially autonomous tech becoming or acting in ways that are malicious, then would we entrust our lives to that? Definitely not. Because I would not get into a self-driving car that I would even think that there's a 5% chance of there being an accident. I just want to be, safe with that. And no matter how much you talk to me and tell me, no, there's a 5% chance, there's a 95% probability of your safety, I'll still be bothered by that 5% of,
Exactly.
then me not being safe. But the fact is that developers are working day and night. Companies are working really hard to achieve 100% safety and efficiency, which is great. Now, as a society or as different communities, we need to be able to have, the either the conversations or the workarounds to ensure safety first. I will repeat
Mhm.
that because I think, just because something is possible doesn't mean that it's, great for us to have. That's okay. And
Yeah.
we can definitely see the innovations, evolving and taking different shapes, taking different forms, which is great. As long as there's safety first, that's non-negotiable. But the second thing is efficiency, because when you think about, let's say, long distance drives for truckers industry, those there have been concerns that, let's say, all these autonomous trucks will wipe out the job of the truckers and drivers and
Mhm.
crew. So
Mhm.
where do we achieve a sweet spot whereby the trucker isn't put out of work, but they are they're made safer in the sense that they don't have to do extremely long drives without a sort of backup in place. Now the
Mhm.
thing is that well, we do have that nexus between jobs being wiped out and all this efficiency kicking in. So how do we achieve and how do we create a space whereby these technologies work with hand in hand with the jobs that are there? Now, it's going to be a bit of a painful but exciting journey in the sense that um, there are jobs that don't exist yet right now, but we can begin to sort of take our minds there and prepare people for that, because we can't say as at right now that all jobs in all industries will be constant. No, that's not a guarantee, and that's not a promise that anyone can make. But at the end of the day, as people and as a societies, we do need to coexist. We do need
Yeah.
to be able to work with what works for us. There are debates around having, let's say, something like universal basic income, which is a sort of promise or contract that if certain jobs are going to be wiped out by autonomous systems, then the
Mhm.
people who are in those jobs right now should be able to get a form of income that they can run around and take care of their basic needs, and it's not to make them lazy because they don't have work, but in the space of being able to find alternative meaningful work, that they are able to make the economy as sustainable as possible. Because the fact is that these machines are not going to go and buy groceries. These machines are
Yeah.
not going to go and fuel up themselves at the filling stations or electrical stations or whatever. But the thing is that as societies, we need just to be able to create systems that work for us and in which we can coexist with this technology. Because if it's going to be as widespread as it ought to be or needs to be or can be, then
Yeah.
we as people or different communities shouldn't be wiped out in the name of, oh, tech is here for it's here for good, here to stay, like be wiped out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the fact is that we just need, first of all, safer and more equitable systems so that we can coexist as societies and with technology.
Yeah. What's your take, Christian?
Yeah, it's interesting because I still remember a few years ago, when all the car companies thought that, yeah, we will all have driverless cars within a few years and we'll all be kind of like, sitting in the back and chilling out and like smoking out cigars or whatever it is. But it didn't really happen. Right? And so I think it's interesting because I recently talked with friends of mine who are in the automobile sector, and they were talking. They completely overestimated, or they completely underestimated the complexity of doing something like this, right? Because it's easy to build. It's relatively easy to build a car that drives on its own, right, or a lorry. But it's relatively hard to estimate how everyone else will act, right? So in a way, it's like a whole system, right? And predicting a system, to your point of the unexpected, is extremely tough, right? Because if you think about it that way, if we think about crossing a street as an individual or by car, there's an assumption if the red light is there that we stop, right? But we still look out, right? We still look right and left because we don't necessarily trust that everyone will do the same. And so it's hard to build that into a system, right? That people might not react to traffic lights the way we think or hope they will. They will still walk over the street. You might still have 3 kids who come from school and who don't care about a traffic light. And so, it's these different things where it's just much more risky, to Rosalyn's point, than people might have assumed. And so I think I'm a big fan of in a way, really thinking through what is the systemic benefit here in terms of thinking about both the risk and the benefits. And then, what are all the other implications? I think it's one thing to build the technology, but it's another thing to think about what does it mean for insurance? Who insures whom? What is actually insured? And so on. So I think there's just so many complexities. And I think by focusing, like a lot of people over-focus on technology itself, but not necessarily on what it means in the societal context. And so I think I work a lot with entrepreneurs, and their first hunch always is, oh, let me work on this really cool product and so on. And then we're stepping back and saying, no. Look at the system first, and like try to understand what is the role in the system for this. And then once we understand all the different people around this, then we can work on the technology a bit better because we understand better what we really need. And I think that's also the learning curve at the moment of a lot of these companies. They focus very much on great technology, but I think they underestimated what it means, again, for all the different system players that are in the game. And so I could only, say essentially that it's very hard to build into an algorithm all the unexpected things that can happen. It doesn't mean that it won't be, possible, and will probably be possible, right? We see lorries now who are self-driving in Europe already and stuff like that. But again, I think it's really to that point to be aware that everything that is about systems is a bit more complex than just doing an app and putting an app out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Another aspect that I would love to point out is that systems thinking as a concept, I wouldn't say it's as widely known or integrated into our workspaces, because being able to appreciate the fact that there's so many cogs and wheels in one system is that you can appreciate both the macro and the micro, that the bigger things, the little things, each one of these are creating variables. And each one of these variables, no, I don't think any singular human being, let alone an algorithm, can appreciate all these complexities in one sitting or one policy, which is why we keep on improving upon policies. We keep on improving upon standards. Aviation industry as a great example is that every major epoch of innovation or safety standards that have come up, it was after an event, and some of these events were tragic, some of these events were positive, some of these events were merely just a group of engineers brainstorming. But each one of these events and milestones came about from a really wide array of innovations. And one of my best, actually, or favorite documentaries in this regard, just to mention it and put it out there, is the making of the Airbus A380, because it combines so many things from history for it to come together as one plane. So for you to be able to appreciate one major thing that's working, you need to be able to see all the little bits and pieces in history that came together for it to be a reality. And that's that's for me one of the key things in appreciating the future of AI, that we have the main idea right now, which is amazing, which is great, but we need to be able to incorporate a lot of milestones and a lot of variables in history that if we don't, it will be harmful for us, which we don't want at the end of the day. Yeah.
Wow, that's yeah, I think that's really good. I mean, that's quite amazing how to look at it. But um, let's talk about the the 5G, and we've been having a lot of conspiracy. What is this 5G? How is it harmful? What is it gonna do? And all this kind of stuff. And then as you both probably share something about the positive side, sorry, and the negative side of 5G. Also probably let's also talk about I mean global ID, and this is a conversation that's been going on in terms of, do we need a global identity? Do you think that's something that's necessary? Do you think that the world already has the necessary technology to actually be able to have a global identification? I think I'll start with Roselyne or Christian, whoever goes first.
Okay, Christian can go first.
Christian
Yeah.
go first.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I find it interesting because it's one of these things. Whenever a step change like this happens, it's obviously so much about essentially that there are always interested people who want to seed misinformation, right? And so 5G is a great step change. It can do a lot of great things. But then, of course, like a couple of people did all these things around, it has, like, there's health problems around this and X, Y, Z. And I think there's very clear scientific consensus that there's no real issue with health. And I think, but again, like with technology in general, there's always potentially something, right, around health. And
yeah.
I remember that when we were talking about all these things like wireless batteries or wireless energy, like how do you charge this? And like there's always potentially something that we can't know yet, right? And where in 10 years everyone has cancer and we're like, oh my God, what just happened? But it seems with 5G, it's a bit less. And that's I think the interesting thing that I find interesting with these step changes. Again, that I feel there's from time to time things which are incremental, right? So we say, oh great, like we can do a couple of more things. But once you have a step change, you can actually do a lot of new things that you couldn't do before. And so I think in that regard, and I think it comes to Roselyne's point earlier, to me, the big question always is how do we make it as accessible as possible to as many people as possible? Because, I remember when I started working in Kenya around 10 years ago, and we were, and then, the iHub came up after time. And so we started working from the iHub and everything else. And I still remember the conversations we had back then, right? How do we make sure that the kids in Kibera has the same access as the kid in other parts of the city, right? And so it's really kind of these questions to me that are the real questions. So I think, again, technology is great and it can do a lot of great things, but how do we make sure that we really kind of make it accessible? And I think, incubators like iHub or tech hubs like iHub can play a big role. I'm missing it a lot, by the way. I'm here in New York now, but my heart.
You should come back. You should come back.
Definitely, as soon as we're allowed to travel again, I think I will. Yeah, and that's also something, like everyone who's listening. I mean, I'd love to connect. Like seriously, I forgot my heart in Kenya, so I'm still fully there.
Yeah, Roselyne.
Yeah. So my thoughts on 5G, just the fact is that we need to be able to appreciate history. Why do I keep referring to history? It's that we don't need to learn from our own experiences necessarily. We can see what other people have done and learn from them in a way that having hindsight and being able to appreciate the mistakes that they've made. Because the truth is that we don't have all the energy, let alone the time, to make certain mistakes. So with 5G, it's that, yes, there might be, clearly voiced health concerns for different reasons by different parties in different contexts. Why? Because if you're a researcher and you're interacting with this, then you have your views of that. I may not be, let's say, a medical practitioner right now, and what I say about AI may not wrap up with you. So I'll leave that aside for today. My thought is that in the same way that we've come a long way from 2G to 3G, to 4G and 5G, it's that be able to see what people have done at each stage with this. With 2G, maybe we could send, we can have voice or text. 3G, we're able to send a few photos, a few videos, take a bit longer. With 4G, it's that you could see the era of companies creating their own content. New avenues and streams of wealth were created as young people were able to set up their channels, go viral, share content, make money, and a lot of people have come out of, let's say, lower income to higher levels of income, and by that, higher standard of living, right? Now, with 5G, it's that imagine not just you, but your community, your industry going to the next level. What will that mean? We keep decrying unemployment across the world in various degrees. And if I pick unemployment, for instance, as a problem that is really cutting across all countries and different ages, because you being out of a job, especially because of this year, it's that one of the first questions you ask yourself is, how am I going to take care of my family, right? Now, if you knew that you could use or connect with online means to be able to create new streams of income without you necessarily just being in a physical space, then wouldn't you consider that and think about it? Yes, there are scams which have caused distrust. We need to be able to address that, but scams aren't all that are there. It's that we need to be able to access the legitimate streams of business and income that are actually there, so that we can appreciate that as a society going forward, 5G will be a tool for us to augment and to kind of just build upon what other people have done previously. So what could that mean for the medical industry? Telemedicine, being able to carry out remote surgeries, that's life saving. That's no doubt a benefit of this tech. I hear 6G is in development. I'm not sure. I've heard about 7G, not sure about that either. But the fact is that as people, we are looking for what's better. We're looking to build things that are faster, things that are more efficient. Is it possible? Is it feasible right now? Maybe not. But the fact is that as we are looking to do what's better and use what's better for our societies and for our industries, it's that see the bigger picture. Don't just be stuck on 5G is bad or 5G is good or 5G is this, 5G is that. No. Ask yourself that as we get better and as we especially handle more information on, especially on a global level, then how are we using this information to actually create value for ourselves? Because that's really the biggest question out of this. It's that all this information being generated and just existing, sitting in different pools, needs people to be able to see, get the right insights, and actually create the value that's needed for us. Because in my view, 5G is a tool, just like 4G and all these other generations of the internet were. For someone who is, wondering if there are conspiracy theories and all those other things, I just say look away from that and just ask yourself, in terms of the bigger picture and where we are kind of just going as humanity and different communities, then what can we do, or how can we use these tools to create value rather than looking at them as enemies or threats and just malicious things? Because if that's your perspective, then you can't appreciate what potential they have. That's just a fact. So if you see this tool as neutral in and of itself, then the next question is, what will you as a person intend or try to do by using this tool? Because once you're able to answer that question and you assign a purpose to it, then you'll be able to have a much more objective appreciation of this technology and platforms.
Okay. Christian, because I think we're just winding up. Could you probably give out maybe your last parting shot, and probably just maybe some advice for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been a delight to be here. Thank you so much. I hope we will all see each other in person soon. I think my final thought is really, I think everyone at the moment is kind of struggling a little bit with the fast changing world, and a lot of things that are going on and a lot of bad things that are happening and so on. But I think, I've always been a big fan of this Viktor Frankl. I told you earlier that in a way we cannot influence every situation, but we can influence our response to it. And I think that is where our freedom is, that is where our growth is. And so I think in 10 years we'll look back and say, wow, like we all went through a similar period of, despair, or a similar period of really tough circumstances. But actually, maybe it was a shaping period for us, because it also helped us to identify a bit more what we really care about, and so on. And so I think I'm a big fan of this idea that even things that feel very hard in the moment, a lot of times that's where our real growth comes from. And so I think, leaving on that note, that all the changes we talked about, they're happening, but at the end of the day, we all are here for a reason, and I think we can do a lot in this world. And so I'm looking forward to keeping in touch and hopefully connecting with quite a few. And thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for so much, Christian. I think I'll let you go as Roselyne also give her parting shot, but I'll connect you guys. Yeah, Roselyne, I think, yeah, so just give your parting shot as well.
All right, thank you so much. My parting shot is actually a simple invitation. To everyone who's listening, don't be harassed by technology, and don't feel that you're missing out. You may have your own learning journey. Understand that pace, appreciate that pace. Um, just be open-minded and be willing to learn. Don't lock your mind out from this and feel that it's too technical for you or it's too futuristic for you. No, just take your own learning pace with this. And once you're able that once you feel that you can understand a few things, you can appreciate the fundamentals, and you're able to align some of your skills to that, then just you never know where this learning journey will take you, whether as a company or as an individual. You do not know where this learning journey will take you. You might pivot your business, you might end up starting a totally different business or taking your business to the next level. But don't lock your mind to this. Yes, there are a lot of technical aspects, other futuristic aspects, but as at now, the best thing that you can do is just be open-minded and be willing to learn, because as things change, then you will be able to to have the opportunity to learn and grow, just as Kristen mentioned. But that the most important thing is that you are willing to learn. If you forget everything that we've mentioned today, just that, remember that, be willing to learn. The applications will spread, applications may change, but the fact is that as humanity, we're making certain steps toward, more progress, more efficiency, more productivity. But at the baseline of it, just be willing to learn.
Yeah, and I think also it comes with more creativity and kind of like more knowledge on you have to learn new things, like a few years ago we were using the normal phone. I don't know how they were. It was not smartphone. So when smartphone came, you actually
Yeah.
had to learn how to use smartphone. We didn't have even touch computers that are touch. Right now you have to also learn how to be able to use all these things. So I think the good part is that it also gives us a challenge to learn. You have to, new technology comes, you have to actually learn that particular technology. So I think it's a good thing. I mean, and even looking at 5G, which you've mentioned, um, about telemedicine, about other form of technology, about how information will actually be very fast. Right now, if you send a video on a WhatsApp, it actually goes very fast. If you have very good call on WhatsApp or on different platforms. So I think all of them is kind of like just it actually helps us to be able to learn more.
Absolutely. And the thing, just as you've said, it's a journey of progression. So let's not feel or think that some of this will be too abrupt or too sudden. It's that as we grow, as we go, we do grow. That's a fact. So let's be
Yeah.
open. And again, what some of the skills, sorry, it's just come across my mind. Some of the skills of the fourth industrial revolution,
Hmm.
creativity and systems thinking will be critical. So, just being able to appreciate that you too can co-create and collaborate with others, really, really important.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's really cool, and I think before we actually wind up, there's something that I actually wanted to ask about, the blockchain technology, and we've been actually I think people have been getting into cryptocurrency and all that. Do you really see future in cryptocurrency, for example? Because recently, I mean, Econ, I'm sure you know the musician. Econ is building his own city, which actually he's looking at using cryptocurrency as the main form of exchange in that particular city. Do you see this kind of futuristic cities working, or do you think we're still a long way to actually achieving this kind of futuristic cities?
All right. So by a simple definition, or just basics first, a blockchain is in the simplest term possible a list. But as you step further into defining it, it's a distributed ledger. Now, what do you use a ledger for? Just basically tracking information, making reference, and being able to trace value. Right. Now,
Yeah.
blockchain in a very logical way, it's that it just makes you be able to track and trace information. But remember that this information is stored in a way that's tamper proof, and you cannot alter past records. So that's just by breaking it down to the basic unit for someone else to be able to appreciate what this tech is about. And imagine if you were writing something and you're writing it down at once. If you get six people to write the same thing at the same time, it'll be different because some will write faster, others have a slightly bigger handwriting than others, and you can tell all these differences, right? But if you get a system to write something down, a computer, it will create exact copies of the same information at the same time. Now, if you're able to create this in a way that you have different copies of the same information at the same time in a tamper-proof manner. That's just how a blockchain works. Now, cryptocurrencies as digital tokens live on such record systems, if I may put
Yeah.
it that way. Now,
Mhm.
that's really how the blockchains and cryptocurrencies work in a nutshell. Now, Bitcoin in itself is important because it's the first and really major cryptocurrency that is well and widely known, among
Mhm.
others.
Yeah.
And they really just offer an alternative means of payment. And at the heart of it is that they are decentralized payment systems in the sense that if I have a Bitcoin wallet, you have a Bitcoin wallet, then I can send you money directly, right? I don't need to have a bank or another financial intermediary between us. We can interact
Mhm.
as peers. And Bitcoin has been said to be the native currency, or the native currency of the internet, in the sense that you only need a Bitcoin wallet to be able to transfer funds from one party to another. So that's how it basically works in a nutshell. Is there a future for that? Yes, absolutely, because um, hundreds of other cryptocurrencies have been created in a copy of, or in a manner similar to Bitcoin, because people have just taken the same technology in principle and just been able to build similar currencies. So there is a place for them. Now, not all of them are known, not all of them are
Mhm.
widely used. Some of them are extremely private, but some of them are publicly used and traded across different countries. So one of the main concerns that's been associated with that is that they are not legal tender, in the sense that you don't have, or you're not obliged by any government to use cryptocurrencies instead of the national currency.
Mhm.
And this, as a concern, has been a point of contention, in the sense that what happens if a terrorist or a drug peddler
Mhm.
uses that, or demands that for payment and things like that. And
Mhm.
we've seen that happening. But the fact is that if you're using let's say Bitcoin for nefarious transactions, through cyber forensics, you can actually be traced. So
Yeah.
it's really not in the interest of someone who is acting in a criminal manner to be online, because you will be traced. That's the fact. And
Yeah.
multiple criminals have actually been prosecuted through, because they were able to be traced that way. And there's a lot of research out there in that regard. So
Yeah.
as at this point, I'm just highlighting that there's a legal context to it. They are safe to use, definitely. There are incidences of scams, there are incidences of criminals, but the tech itself is not bad. So in the context of futuristic cities, it's that people will need to be aware and to appreciate the benefits of cryptocurrencies to begin with. And
Mhm.
for a cryptocurrency to work in the context of a city, it's that the participants or the inhabitants or the citizens of that region will have to be um, very well comfortable with in the first place, and just have the basics of how to use a wallet, how to send money, how to receive money, and how to convert it for, let's say, tokens and loyalty points, or just different reward systems in that context. So the fact is that cryptocurrencies do have a future, but this future is heavily dependent on two things. And one of those is simple education, in the sense that, just how you are able to use your phone, and you're able to use different applications, how to download them off either Play Store or App Store, or to install them from, let's say, your friend sends you an app that you didn't, have before, and you're able to install it. Using a cryptocurrency wallet is just as simple as, being able to download an app and probably deposit some money. So, taking away the complexity out of it is really the first line of adoption. And the second line of adoption is actually just having all these cogs in the wheel of a system whereby I can pay for my, my utility bills, my my simple transactions, my purchases, and being able to take care of different different things, let's say on a business to business level. So for these cryptocurrencies to work, and again, I need to mention that the central bank digital currencies and national currencies are at play, because different governments may not use, let's say, a cryptocurrency that's just, so to speak, out there, that they cannot control.
Yeah.
But they will use it. They will or could use the same technology to actually create a national digital currency that's at par with the national currency, whether it's Kenya shilling, dollar, yen, and so on and so forth. And if you're able to just look at or research the emergence of central bank digital currencies, then you will see how different countries are thinking about or trying to implement the the emergence or the means or way to track how their national currency is being used, let's say, like on a national digital ledger like never before. Because with cash, you can't really trace to the last mile. Once cash changes hands, you may never see that cash. Okay, I don't even think you can ever see that cash again. But
Yeah.
if there's a digital version of that, then it can actually trade. It can actually give you a history. Oh, okay, this shilling went from this person to that person to that person. So there are implications. So, should we really have that kind of data for currency? That's that's really up for another discussion. But the fact is that right now there are quite some developments going toward the use or the release of central bank digital currencies. As for cryptocurrencies, definitely the more people understand and see how easy they are to use, then it will go to wider use. But for adoption to really be successful beyond the first 200 or 500 million users, then we do need to cross the thresholds of actually education and just relevance in a business utility context.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, thank you very much, Roselyne. I think it's been a very good conversation, and thank you so much also for taking your time and being able to join this conversation.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much, and